Hey everybody, it's time to talk to one of the writers of the brand new ThunderCats comic book series, and this is for issue 5. And I have a special guest, and of course, that is Stephen Mooney. Hi, welcome, and it's wonderful to meet you and to be talking to you about what you've done.
Thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell me, I'd like to know a little bit more about yourself. Tell all the viewers who you are and what it is that you do specifically.
Uh, I'm Stephen Mooney. I've been working in comics now for 20 plus years, mostly as an artist until about 10 years ago when I started writing professionally with my own. I have a book called Half Past Danger. It's a creator-owned book that I do, which was the first thing that I wrote. That was in 2000 and it came out in 2013. So that's 11 years now I've been writing as well as drawing. So the ThunderCats book that is I'm drawing it and writing it. It's just a one-shot kind of a story to give Declan and Drew just a little break between major arcs. But I mostly still draw, but I'm writing three other books at the minute, and I'm drawing my own book that's about to come out with Image next month. So it's I guess I'm a writer artist. I always felt I was an artist, but nowadays there's more writing than drawing. So I guess I don't know what the description is really. Just comics guy.
That's awesome. So tell me, how did you get involved with ThunderCats?
Well, like I mean, like a lot of us, I was a big fan as a kid. And like when you're in your a man in his 40s, I'd say nearly all of us probably watched ThunderCats in the 80s when it was on. But I'm Declan and I are really good friends, and we're both here in Ireland. So I knew that he was working on the book when he was doing all his research and getting the storyline together. And I had seen some issues coming up, and I knew they were going to be really good. And now nobody knew it was going to be so like it's hugely successful, which is brilliant. But I don't think any of us knew at that stage it was going to hit so big. But I knew it was going to be good. And I had said to Deck, listen, I'd love to do a cover or whatever, like the standard kind of a thing when there's a series that one of your mates works on, and you can go listen. I'd like if there's a guest cover or whatever, just let me know something small. Uh, but then Nate Cosby, who's the editor on the series, asked me would I like to do a one shot because he was planning on doing. This is now back before the main series actually started. They were planning on doing a series of one shots. I don't know what the plan is now for that. And the one he offered me was Chitara because she was my favorite character. And it turns out now Chitara has her own, there's an actual series of Chitara coming out soon, which looks really good. So they've obviously expanded on that due to the popularity. So my one shot got folded into the main series because it was to do with the overall storyline anyway. So they're able to use that as an issue where it would become a break issue for the main creative team, and it happened nice and organically actually. So and scheduling worked out for me that I had time to do. Nate asked me did I want to do a mini series, but I said I could do one issue because of the other series I'm drawing right now. It's just there's no time to do more than one, but I really wanted to do one just to have like scratch the itch and to kind of contribute to the book. So he said Chitara. I said yeah, Chitara definitely. And so I just looked. I conferred with Declan. Declan obviously is the main, like we call him the showrunner, I guess is the equivalent, like in TV, where he's the main writer and everyone has to go through him with their storylines and just make sure we coordinate everything so that I'm not telling one story that's completely different to what he's telling in the main book. So we brainstormed that a bit with Nate, and yeah, it came pretty quickly. A Chitara-centric story where she's a kind of a teaching role for Lionel, who Lionel's a bit down. I don't know if you read issue four. Have you read issue four?
I've read this issue, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So it ends on a bit of a downer for Lionel particularly. So it's basically Chitara trying to build Lionel back up and give him a few lessons along the way so that he can recover from the events and get ready for the next major arc, which Deck and Drew are already well underway on because they've had this break. So now they've got a good bit of stuff in the tank ready to go. So I think it worked out well anyway.
So you've just mentioned now Chitara. Is she your favorite Thundercat of them all?
Oh yeah.
Is there
Oh
a
yeah.
reason why?
Totally. Well, when I was younger, the reason was because she was the girl, and she was the pretty one. I mean, you had Wiley Kit, but she was like a young kid, so that was different. But Chitara, I was like the hot Thundercat when I was a kid. But then I actually realized that she was a really cool character. in her own right, and the speed aspects and the speed of thought, speed of action, like she was very commanding. So I actually really grew to respect her as a character once I read the old Marvel UK ThunderCats comics when they were coming out, and I really enjoyed her in that. So she just, I mean, I like them all. Panther's great, Tiger's great. I'm a big fan of all of them. It's just Chitara always to me was the one I felt like I could do something with if I ever got a chance. Yeah,
So tell me, you just
she's good.
mentioned these old
She's good
Marvel
with
comics. Um, did
yeah.
they in any way inspire you in not just your career, but also with your approach of this specific chapter in the story?
They definitely were a big influence on me in getting into comics. They were before I ever read any US comics. It was the Marvel UK comics and then the Marvel UK reprints, the Essential X-Men, the Essential Spider-Man, things like that through Marvel UK. So they were a huge influence on it career-wise. As for a direct influence, maybe when it comes to characterization, how I treated her, but the main influence for the actual story came from Declan's story and what he had been doing up until that point. That's definitely my what I took as a launch pad. But it all informed. I mean, the cartoon, the Chitara cartoon. Obviously, they're very simplified in the cartoon. Going back now, they're very by the numbers, basic stories like good guys, bad guys, morality tales. You know, which is when you're a kid, that's what you want. But obviously, you're trying to be a bit more sophisticated now. People who are reading this are going to be older, generally speaking, like myself. So you want to inject a little bit more sophistication and nuance. I mean, I'm sure it's all in there swirling around. You know, it's very hard to pin down where one thing comes from and another one doesn't. It's tough, but yeah, for sure it was an influence, I'd say.
Okay, so you've actually now covered actually most of my questions by answering a lot of them.
No, ask away. I'll elaborate. I'll elaborate. I'm sure I have
In,
more.
yes,
Have you done Irish people? Have you met Declan before? He never shuts
yes,
up. So
that's
we'll
fine.
answer all the questions. No problem.
In terms of this specific issue, I mean, it does feel a little bit different than the first four issues. I've been we at the start of June now, and this issue 5 is only coming out sometime in the next week or in the
It's
next
been
two
a
weeks or
week.
3 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So
Very soon. Yeah.
as soon as that goes live, I will publish this interview because we can't spoil everything for everybody now. Before we're lucky you've written it. I've been fortunate enough to read it, but it does feel a little bit different. But it's actually like taking a step back and focusing on these lessons that she's actually trying to teach him, which is like it's refreshing in terms of the storyline, which I really enjoyed this. I didn't
Oh, good.
realize at the time then that this would lead into the Chitara spin-off, and that feels like it it's it happened by chance, like you just mentioned now. It wasn't really the plan, but you requested when you dealt with them that you wanted to do a Chitara-centric chapter story for the series. And then this new spin-off with Chitara that Sue is doing, that just fell out of the blue, or how did you react when you realized that happened, or that was in the pipeline?
It was interesting, yeah. It was interesting because I didn't know until I heard it was only a month or so ago that I heard before the advertisements. I didn't know they were working on it, and it's a prequel series more so.
Yes.
So they were able to really go their own way with it. Now Declan's read it. He says it's really good. I haven't read it yet, but apparently it's very good. I'm sure I'll read it soon. So it was really interesting, and it's such a different like take, which is a good thing. And with women creators on there, I think this is great because Chitara, obviously, you don't just want a bunch of men working on her all the time. It's nice to get that different input and like that kind of feminine voice. But it's an interesting one because I'm not that my one would have been done before their one. So it'd be more a case of they would have seen my story before they did their story rather than me seeing theirs. Like I was finished on this weeks ago. So it's interesting. I can't really comment on that till I read the first issue of Sue's story and see. But Declan said it works really well. So obviously Nate Cosby, the editor, has been making sure that everything marries together properly and it all knits into one coherent,
Mhm.
overarching storyline. So it's pretty cool. It's great to see Chitara get so much action as well because from nowhere to like single issues series that covers all over the place. It's great. Like, you know, I love it seeing.
Yeah, that I mean, when they announced that Chitara is getting her own series, I was like, that's I did not see that coming. I was thinking maybe it would
Yeah.
be a character like Panther or a character like Tiger because they are the second and third in command in terms of the gents.
Oh, I'd
But
say they're coming. I'd
I'm
say
really
Panther on Tiger. Oh yeah, I mean they're too cool not to do something with them, aren't they? It's
yes,
got to happen. Like
yes.
I'd put money.
Hopefully.
I'd put money now that it will happen.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. So, when you were writing the story, were you asked to include anything specifically by Declan in this issue that you had to drop a hint of something without knowing the reason why, or was it explained to you? Listen, you need to mention something because we've got this path paved out. We need to get there, and this needs to be dropped in here. Was there anything during this issue that you had to add in?
There was there were only a few little specific pieces, like the Sword of Omens had to be broken and had to involve Calica. I hope now I can say things that have happened, right? This is coming out after my issue, okay.
Yes.
So like plot points more so, I didn't want to do anything that would dictate what would happen in the future. I wanted that to be Declan's baby completely. So I felt like I wanted to insert it right at the point where the first arc had happened and they're reacting to this, and then they're just ready with an open slate to go into the next act, with Lino maybe having perked up a little bit and being more confident in himself, and Chitara having said what she wanted to say. Um, and it was actually very open. Declan, I mean, we brainstormed the general idea together, but then I just went off and I wrote my script, and then Nate and Declan took a pass on my script, and if they had any notes at that point, they weighed in. But it was generally just dialogue stuff or paring it down a little bit. Maybe I had a bit too much in there to begin with, because when you've only got one issue to work with, you try and get, generally speaking, you try and get a lot of stuff in there because you know this is the one issue you have. Where Declan has 4 or 8 or 10 or whatever it is. So I put a bit too much in there, so I had to cut back some stuff. But other than that, he really liked what I had done, and he seemed happy enough with it. Like, and we're very honest with each other. Like, we've like grown up together here, and we're like we have no problem telling something if something is not working or we think it could be better. So he would have told me if he thought something needed to improve, and not really nothing really like that. Nate had more notes than Declan actually, just for things like editorial notes for dialogue notes and cutting down some passages and things like that. It was very smooth sailing. Yeah.
Okay, there's something that I picked up in this issue, and there was the mention of Lionel's father quite a few times, Claudius, and actually and how he came up was the roles that these Thundercats played for him and how they interacted with him before they crash landed on Third Earth. Was this done deliberately to give us a little bit of insight on their lives on Thundera before they crash landed, or was this just am I reading too much into this? Because it's rather interesting
No, no,
to
no.
hear this history.
It was very deliberate. Yeah, it was very deliberate. I always liked the stuff with Claudius in the cartoon and the further stories. I really like that father-son dynamic. Like I'm a sucker for that stuff in all sorts of media. And I just wanted to pepper little bits just to show that that expanded universe is still there in a way, even if Declan hasn't got to it yet. That the royalty aspects and the chain of command and everything as it was in Thundera and Claudius, whether I mean, who knows, Claudius is, I would presume he's dead. We don't know, like, but I don't know if you noticed in the double page splash I did where Lino is imagining his future as Lord. He's got some armor on that's very influenced by Claudius's battle armor. So that was intentional too. So I really no, that's all in there because I wanted it in there. So I'm glad that you picked up on it. Actually, it's good that you've seen it, so people should see it. Because I love all that stuff. Like that's the kind of direction I would go if I was coming back to do a bit more. I'd probably explore a little bit maybe up to Lionel's lineage and his father's line and the royalty, and I'd love to dive into that angle of things.
So some
Even his
Easter
mother,
eggs.
like
Oh
yeah,
yes, yes, his
yeah,
mother. There is the only time we've ever heard about Lionel's mother was in the 2011 cartoon series. There is
yeah.
no mention of her in the original cartoon. So hopefully we'll find out a little bit more. I mean, the floor is yours. You guys can do whatever it is that you
Yeah.
want, which is fantastic.
That's the great thing about this book. We can once like once the licensors are happy, they're very, very happy for Declan to just introduce any aspect and change it, just change it enough that it's different but still recognizable and cool. Like, you don't want someone to change things totally because then you eject a lot of what was good about the original. So it's that tightrope of just keeping the best stuff and expanding on it. So yeah, I'd love to go more into that, like his mother, especially if I was coming back to explore that thing.
So there's something that I picked up that Chitara said. She mentioned to Lina that he is not the first person to let his guard down around somebody that they care for. Is this something we'll read more about, or that you know of, we'll read more about later on, or was that just a general statement?
No, that's a little bit foreshadowing as well. Yeah,
Okay.
to do with the relationship, you might think it might be to do with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, no,
I
that's
thought
it's
so. I
all in
thought
there
so.
on purpose. It's all in there on
Okay.
purpose. And if Deck doesn't pick that one up, I'll come back and pick it up myself. Like it'll get picked up. That's all coming. Yeah.
Excellent.
That was one of
So
the
would
things actually Declan mentioned. If you want to maybe sprinkle a little bit of this in there to do with maybe that relationship or non-relationship or whatever. So I threw a couple of bits in there on purpose. Yeah. So you're exactly right there. Yeah.
Would you like to come back and continue with this Chitara arc later on in the series?
I would love to come back and write more. It's the drawing takes so long. But I do have ideas, and you're on the right track of stuff I'd love to come back and explore. So I mean, it went really well and we worked well together. It's up to Declan and Nate. If there was more writing down the line for me, be happy to do it because I can do that. I can write an issue in a week or two, whereas to draw it takes 6 or 7 weeks. So it's just a totally different ball game, you know. But yeah, I mean, I've got ideas. If they want me to come back, I will come back.
Excellent. Now, of the art, the style of this issue, it's a little bit different than the first four. Obviously, because it's a different artist, which is yourself. But it does feel like it was done on purpose stylistically, because of the intense emotions that's actually going on in this specific issue and the subjects that's being touched on. Was that done deliberately? Or was that just a happy chance that your style influenced the story that you had written and made it feel a little bit more different, but it worked perfectly?
I think it was both. I wanted it to be grittier and to be a little bit more intense, and my artwork would be darker and grittier than Drew's. Drew's has a lovely kind of almost animation style quality to it, whereas mine is more grounded, I suppose. And because they're like Chitara's really hard on Lino in this one at parts of it, like she's literally not pulling her punches. Like Lino is surprised by how he perceives it as almost cruel she's being at the start with him because she's just like kind of got to the end of her tether a little bit where she has to say her piece and she feels Lionel has been whining a little bit maybe, and I mean she's sympathetic with it and when it comes around, but she's definitely harsh in places, and I felt like maybe going a bit darker, like shadows, grittier, like in the opening sequence in the bedroom in the royal chamber where she's almost an ominous presence, a foreboding presence where she holds him out of bed to go and train, like Lionel's actually a little bit like, this is actually strange. Why are you even in here? You can't just waltz into my quarters. Like he is the Lord of the ThunderCats, but she just at this point Chitara almost doesn't care because she feels like if she doesn't give him this lesson right now, things could go badly, and it just has to be. So yeah, I think it is that. I mean, that's generally my style anyway, but I've leaned a little bit more into the darkness, I think, in this one, just to make it grittier. Yeah.
Well,
I
you
hope it
just
worked.
mentioned,
Do you think it worked?
yes, it definitely did.
Okay.
This the
Mm.
that ominous feeling. It really was. It was surprising. It was like you don't know what to expect because this is not something that you're used to. Because I mean, obviously, we've got the first four issues now that we know the style of that, and then this is out of the blue. She's like there, and it's like, come with me, come. So
Yeah.
it's that is something that I really liked when she told him that. Listen, I might be paraphrasing here, but if we don't do this now, we're going to miss the opportunity to fix something
Yeah.
that might remain broken later on. So
Totally.
that was rather clever. In this issue, there is a tease. There's like 4 pages of the prequel for Chitara. You've seen those? I'm assuming.
There. Yeah. Yes, but I haven't read the full issue.
Yes. Okay. Now there's no text whatsoever on these 4 pages. I'm not sure if there's meant to be text. You can just see them walking through this certain area, and then you see the Sword of Omens, and you also see the treasure chest of Thundera. Um, was any of this mentioned to you? Not at
No,
all. Not in terms
no.
of the prequel series, but in terms of these items are off limits that you can't do anything with them. Was there anything that they told you you may not work on or may not mention when you started your story?
Not not really. Other than the Sword of Omens had to be in the state that it's left in at the end of issue 4, which is the Shattered Blade. Nobody told me that there would be any of that in. I mean, at that point, you have to realize when I was writing this issue, it was like 8 or 10 weeks ago. So I didn't even know there was another Chitara story. So,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure. I mean, probably only Nate really knew properly at that point. So Declan couldn't say to me, "Now make sure you don't do A, B, C because that's coming up in the spin-off. So you need to not go near that." So I'm not even sure. That's how fast these things are going. At that point, I'm not even sure Chitara's own series was more than an idea with Nate and Sue because it was a surprise to me, honestly, a good surprise. And it all works together. So Nate Cosby, who's the editor of the whole ThunderCats line, is the one making sure that my story is working with Declan's story, and that's working with Sue's story, and there's no overlap. So he's got the kind of the hard job there. So if you should get him on, he'd be a great guy to interview because he knows
Definitely.
all of the things, whereas I know bits and pieces, and Declan knows most of the stuff. But Nate's the only one who actually knows all of the stuff.
Okay, that's
It's
interesting.
interesting. Yeah.
Do you know if they do you know what would have been the reason that Chitara got greenlit? I mean, we just talked about it earlier. Um,
Hmm.
there's stronger story. Well, we assume there are stronger stories with Panther and Tigra, but she, like I said, she came out left field, and I was shocked that she is. And this issue itself was like there was a spotlight on her that I've never experienced before, or the way that I looked at her, it gave us a little bit more insight into her character. So this, to me personally, made sense. This was like a prequel to the prequel series,
Yeah,
and this
yeah.
this really just made sense as to why they could focus on her, because there definitely is more to her than what we used to from the cartoon. So for me personally, it does make sense as to why a series would have been greenlit for her, but. Is there a reason why you think that would have worked?
Well, there is one reason, like a really basic reason, because I know when the series was beginning, and Declan has a lot of friends in the business who are cover artists and Marvel and DC artists, and we all know each other. And a lot of people wanted to do Chitara covers. So she's obviously very popular in the artistic community. So whether or not that translates, I don't know if that means she's one of the more popular characters in the franchise. I mean, for me, she was, but I always assumed, I guess Panthro would be the first. I don't know why. I just assumed it would be Panthro. And if there was going to be another one, maybe Tiger and Chitara together would maybe get a series. But yeah, I never saw Chitara getting her own series. That was a surprise. So maybe they just I hope. I mean, I'm hoping that they saw my issue and was like, well, she can really carry this. She's a strong enough character that she could carry her
It
own
feels
series.
like
And
that. It does
simply
feel like that.
yeah, so if I had to guess, it would be something like that. But I mean, again, to be 100% honest, I didn't know. So it's a strange one. I've only seen those pages you've seen with no dialogue. So I'm waiting to see what happens there as well. Yeah.
So there's something that I picked up on this when I read the whole issue. I had to go sit and think about what it was that I was experiencing, and something just triggered in the back of my mind. It was, this feels like the anointment trials from the cartoon, but there's no running. Um, there's absolutely no running. There's no speed chase or anything. Um, did you want to include her running ability in your issue?
Well, that's a good question because I was thinking of that episode. Um, I felt like it would be at the start. I decided I was going to have Chitara just hold back and not use her speed. Um, but then to be honest, on some of the action scenes, she's hitting him so fast, and he's trying to hit her back and just can't. She's obviously using her speed. Like she's not. That's faster than anyone is without using. So she's kind of cheating a bit. where when she's got the upper hand with Lionel. I think if she didn't use her speed, I don't think she could beat him in a fight. So, or even really, he is so much stronger than her. But he's also, and I tried to point this out in the book, he's also so new with these, sorry, he's also so new. These abilities to him, they only just happened, like the time frame was like a couple of weeks in this book. So it's like if you wake up with this scrawny guy, it's like say Captain America comes out of the machine and he's this huge guy. Like to me, you've got to learn to move. You've got to learn to shift all that new weight. If you go from a teenage scrawny body to a grown man with musculature, he's still a kid, really. He looks like an adult, but he's not an adult. He's a teenager in the body of an adult. His mind didn't mature magically over the course of the journey. His body did. So to me, he has to learn. It was interesting to me was to see him have to learn to move that huge arm or those huge legs and to be able to brace himself and learn. And that's what Chitara is trying to teach him, that he has to understand he's such a different being now that he has to fight differently. He has to learn to be the new version of himself. So I think if she doesn't employ the speed, like he's gonna cream her. Like one punch and he'd go through her chest. He's so strong. So she is using her super speed. Like you can see in the sequences where she's going to town on him, she's zipping around the place a bit. I just didn't have her running for any stretch, but she's certainly using super speed because she has to. And even then, he still manages to get the best of her, like toward the end. And he makes the joke that she let him hit her, but she did not let him hit her. He just hit her. So that's how she knows her lesson has been learned. I don't know if that came through in the story
Yes,
or
it
not.
definitely did.
Okay.
It did. And this is something that I'm not too familiar with comic books. I mean, I've read the old Marvel comic books as well, and some of the others from the US as well, but that was years ago. But how you designed this these fight sequences, I was so shocked about how fantastically wonderful this was done. It progressed naturally from the one scene to the next one, and with each scene there was something that she had to say that it felt like the punch that she was giving him every single time, that the words actually also punched. So that was so fantastic. Did you draft the action sequences first, or did you do the copy first, or a bit of both? Because it does seem like she's got something that she needs to tell him, but how to get it across. Did you have somebody go and work out the fight sequences?
It's a good question. No, although I do act them all out myself as I'm doing them hilariously. Even the girl parts, which is very funny. Like I have pictures of me as Chitara on my computer, which I hope nobody ever sees. But
we need to put this in here.
The way when I'm writing for myself, I don't map out the scenes. I do in my head though, but I don't on paper. It's kind of tough to explain. Like when I was writing those scenes, I could see exactly how they would look. And I knew, like you say, when she's delivering a punch, she's also delivering a punch line. So she's hitting him with her words and her fists. So making those match was key because that's all about the timing and the pacing. I think when you're doing both yourself, it's easier because you don't have to worry about whether your artist will know exactly what you're going for with the timing and the pacing. And I think for an action-heavy issue like this, it is very important to make sure those hits land and to make sure the lessons land at the same time. So I'm really glad that you say that because that's exactly what I was trying to do. But you never know until people read it whether that comes across. But yeah, she's supposed to be hitting him with words and hitting him with lessons and hitting him with her fists. A lot of allegorical kind of stuff in there. So the fact that you said that, I mean, that is exactly what I wanted it to read like. So I'm glad that you took it that way. That was always the plan. But there was never, it's just because I'm writing and drawing it myself. There's no real 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It just happens. I know that's not a great answer, but like if I was writing for a different artist, I would be much more specific. I would write in this panel, I want you to show her arm approaching Lionel's cheek. In the next panel, I want you to show the connection point, and as it connects, she says this, which presses home the fact that she is thinking this, and this. Much more basic, but my script is very loose for myself because I'll know when I'm doing it because I'd just be doing the work twice if I wrote it all out and then drew it all out.
There's one word that stood out for me in the entire issue, and that is the word impetuous. Now, I'm not an English speaking first language person. My first language is something else. But when I was a kid, I heard this word in the show. So I mean, I watched it in English, and that was an interesting word that I picked up on, and I had to go and find out what this actually meant. So it stuck with me forever. And when I read this issue, it was an immediate throwback when Chitara said that he's impetuous. And it just felt like a throwback or a reference to the cartoon. And that's I could hear her say that. So that was really just like, wow, okay, this is cool. This is a nice tie-in. Was that on purpose or was it just a happy accident?
It wasn't. I don't think it was on purpose, but now that you've said that, I do remember it from the cartoon. So maybe I felt like I was just happening naturally, but maybe it did do that because I knew that it was definitely consistent with the show. So I don't know actually is the answer there because now the fact you saying like that makes me think I must have got that from the show. But at the time I didn't think so. It just felt like the right thing. It felt like in character what Chitara would say. So a bit of both, I suppose. Yeah, I think you're right though. It's definitely from the show, isn't it? Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So that's it's interesting how something like that would go and get stuck in the back of your mind,
Yeah.
and without even knowing, it would come to the front, and then you realize later on that this was something
Mm.
that's from there. So I'd like to
So
talk about
your
the
English is very good for somebody who doesn't speak it first language.
I speak it every day. I have to. It's part of my job as an
Is it
English tutor.
Afrikaans normally, or what's
Yes,
your
I'm
first language?
Afrikaans. Yes, I
Yeah.
am
Yeah.
Afrikaans. Yes.
Mm.
You know about it on your side
Well,
of the world. There's a bunch of us on
a
that
bit.
side.
I can't speak it, but I can tell the accent. Yeah.
Yes. So I'd like to talk about the ending of this. Now, it started off with the fighting, and then it sort of like melted into something else where she was giving him insight, and then it flashed back to that, and it was like this unexpected. You think you're comfortable, and then the next moment there's this thing coming from this side or coming from that side, and that is a perfect description of how they were fighting or how a fight could be. Um, that was really just a great way to end the story and to show how Lionel has grown. I mean, that was the whole purpose. Like you said, she found out when he punched her that he had learned the lesson. So that that
Mm.
that was something. Um, and now this is something that's been touched on in the tune several times, where they have mentioned now, look at him, he's grown up and he's growing. So it was just mentioned in the as a just as a by the by while they were talking at the end when that lesson came up at the end of each episode. But you've now gone and fleshed this out quite specifically for this chapter. So this is like we finally have going into detail talking about Lionel uh, learning from being a cub to actually being this full-grown heroic leader that he is. Was that on your idea from the start that you wanted to get him to grow up basically and to learn
Yeah,
something new?
that's exactly what it was. Yeah. 100%. When I was deciding what I wanted to do for my story, I knew I wanted to do Chitara, but I felt like when I discovered that it was going to be part of the main series and not just a Chitara book, that's when it became more of a two-hander with Lion-O, half Lion-O, half Chitara, because I knew it would have. I wanted to progress. I saw it as a perfect opportunity. It's always frustrated me that we've never really got into the nitty-gritty of the fact that he's just jumped into this body. And I mean, there was parts in the show where you'd see him, he was a bit clumsy or he wasn't used to his new frame, but they never really, I mean, in a kid's show, you're not really going to go into that so much, but the psychology of it and the physiology of it. So I've always wanted to kind of get in there and kind of explore that a little bit. So I saw this as the perfect opportunity because Chitara is such a good teacher for this lesson. Like Tiger wouldn't do it the same way, and Panther certainly wouldn't do it the same way. So for me, it was the perfect time to get Chitara to make Lionel sit down and actually think and explore what's happened to him, and take the time to just settle down a little bit and let's go through this and realize here's why you're here and here's why you're so frustrated. and have angst and things like that. So that's really, to me, that's really interesting. And I agree that they never really fleshed that out before. So I was like, this is something I can do that hasn't been done to my knowledge. Like I've read a lot of the US, like the Wildstorm books and the Marvel UK books, and I don't remember them ever really going into it. So I felt like it was something new as well. And I just thought it'd be cool to do it. Like and Declan thought it was a good idea too. So yeah, that's very deliberate. And I'm glad. I mean, you're making me feel like I did a good job now because everything you're asking me is what I want, what I intended it to be. So that makes me think that, okay, this should land. How the fans will know what I'm talking about here, and they should get something from this. So I'm feeling better about it now. But totally intentional, yeah.
Okay. No, this, like I said at the start, this issue was very different. It was not the normal storyline from the previous ones, but I actually liked this because it was so different, because of what we learned. I mean, there's so many little Easter eggs thrown in here and there, not just from the tune, but things that we missed that we never had in the tune that we wanted
Yeah.
to as adults now, we'd like to understand a little bit more and delve deeper into that. So
Hmm.
you've really created a fantastic story on this issue,
Oh,
and
thank you.
I'd really like to say thank you. It's really been a pleasure reading this, and I do hope that we get to see you again in the Thundercats universe in the future. So if you were to return, you would like to continue, or would you like to continue the Chitara story, or would you like to try something different, a Mamra origin story?
No, I don't think Declan would let me touch that one. That's his. Uh, if I were to come back, I'd certainly like to go a bit into Chitara Tigra and Lino's family would be the two things if I was coming back that I'd like to expand upon. They're the two things that I have ideas for right now. So if they can, if Deck and Nate came to me and said we need another break for the main team or something else, like I say, if it was the writing of it, I would happily do it. But I don't think I'll be maybe a cover or two, but I don't think there'll be more artwork for me on Thundercats because it just unfortunately takes me so long. It's just and I got you. You might have noticed that I put in a nice splashy image of Panthro, a nice splashy image of Tigra, a nice splashy image of Cat and Kit. They were
That
there
was
so I could get those.
fantastic.
So it was part of the story, but it also meant that I could do my nice picture of this guy, a nice picture of this guy, and they're out of my system. Whereas Chitara, I could keep drawing. I'd happily draw her more in Lino too. So yeah, I don't. The honest answer is I don't know. I mean, we've said maybe more in the future. And I said sure, if but schedules and Declan and Drew are doing such a good job on the main book that I'd say there's a part of Drew that doesn't want anybody else drawing issues of the main book because he's the guy. And if I was the main artist, part of me wouldn't want other people coming in and drawing other stories. That's his book. I'm just like the guest star in this one. You know what I mean? So I can see it from both sides. Uh, Honest answer, don't know, but would happily come back if the chance was there. And I've got
Well,
loads of ideas for what.
I do hope that when you come back that you'd continue with this Chitara storyline. We've got the prequel, which is going to be different, but I do like this vibe and the look of Chitara in this issue. It's like you're getting to know her personally a little bit more. So I'd have to speak to Nate and make a request that
Yeah,
you come back.
you let him know. Tell him tell him Mooney says he'll do it if he doesn't have to draw it.
Awesome. So tell me, what's next for you?
Uh, Actually, I've got a new. Do you know Kurt Busiek, the American writer? He's like a superhero, famous American superhero writer, and another guy called Fabian Nicieza. They both were big '90s superheroes, Marvel writers. So I have a book, Image Comics. We have a creator-owned book, superhero book, starting next month called Free Agents, and I'm really happy with it actually. I'm just drawing the last issue of the first arc now, so we're quite far along in it, and it's really been different for me, like a pure superhero book, which I haven't really done much of. Like I've done a good bit of Marvel stuff and DC stuff, but it was never the like out and out colorful superheroes. Like I did Black Widow at Marvel and Dick Grayson at DC and characters like that, which are a bit more underground. So it was very interesting to do, and I'm happy with those. And then after that, hopefully, I'll be doing another series of Half Past Danger, which is my own creator and book. I write and I
Mm.
draw that one. And then I do a couple of covers for Marvel every month, and maybe another ThunderCats cover coming up soon as well. So lots to do, which is why it's hard to fit in drawing any more ThunderCats. But like I say, the writing is a much more doable prospect. So I'll see what happens down the line. But yeah, Free Agents is the big one for me next month. And then obviously issue 5 of ThunderCats is the next thing. I think it's next week. It's either next week or the week after. Of course, when this interview comes out, it'll be out already, so it doesn't matter what I say.
Yes.
But
Yes.
that's the one that's the next thing with my name on it coming out. Oh, sorry, I should say I'm also got a Rocketeer. Do you know Rocketeer?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I write Rocketeer for IDW. So I'm on my third series of Rocketeer, which is coming out in July also with an artist called Staz Johnson, a British artist. So lots on. Busy.
Exciting. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Listen, thank you so much, Stephen, for taking the time to talk to me about your part of this impressive ThunderCats comic book. It's been so successful, like you've said. It's reaching fans all across the globe, and it's wonderful. And I just wish you all the best with your next project. And if we only just get a different cover from you in the future for ThunderCats, or another story, if it's just a story, it'll be wonderful to have you back. But thank you so much. And we'll be talking again when you cross paths against with the ThunderCats universe.
Yeah, man, a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, and thank you you did a really good job reading that issue because you picked up on pretty much everything I put into it. So I'm glad going now out of this interview. I think people are going to like it now because you're a big fan. So if you like it, maybe the rest of them will like it. You know, it's a bit nervous knowing you're the guy who's not the main. Like the other guys have done such a good job. You don't want to be the one who comes in and everyone goes, "Oh, where are the other guys? Bring them back quick." So hopefully people will be like, "Oh, this is a nice change of pace," and they'll be ready for Declan and Drew next month again. And that's the hope anyway. Yeah.
Well, you can be proud. It's fantastic issue. I'm very glad to have read it. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Take care.